Okay, welcome to the Energizing America podcast, where we talk all things energy and why we need it in our business and communities and our life. Excited to sit down with Calvin this today and talk about automation. And this is a weird topic, and it's kind of an obscure topic. Seems like, Calvin, every time I'm sitting down with folks and they ask about our automation techs and they start pinning me with questions, it's the one time I'll back into a corner because I'm not exactly sure what you guys do either. But automation is a very timely topic given what's going on in the world, which we've certainly been following here at Wescom. And I think the entire world around us is confused. Have you checked the price of a barrel of oil?
I actually did today. It's down quite a bit. It's
I saw
$106 for WTI last I checked.
Okay, so 106 today, but still,
Right.
do you remember what the lowest price that you saw was?
Negative 20.
Negative 20. So think about up to 106. That's a $126 improvement. But even at $106 a barrel oil, are you feeling like we're going to start seeing some? We've actually, when the oil prices took a dive, we in our industry, in the oil and gas side, we slowed down quite a bit on the automation end, didn't we?
Yeah, more than expected actually.
Yeah, we kind of expected that automation would keep on going. Of course, we were involved in more construction on automation.
Right. We were doing a lot of commissioning of new facilities, so that was, I guess, a large reason why it did slow down. But still, it was somewhat surprising because usually there's a fairly large backlog of other projects, like just site improvements, or lots of times when new facilities go in or are built, there's things that aren't put into place right away that could be added later, more automation, data collection type of things that continue even when things slow down.
Yeah.
So it seems like in the past, oftentimes the automation guys would kind of roll into either a maintenance role or, catching up on some of those items. Maybe they finally get a little bit of breathing room and once the construction slows down, but not in the last downturn.
The last downturn, it was turn everything off.
Right.
But of course, negative pricing will do that. So now when we're seeing this 106 pricing, are you seeing a bigger need for our services?
Once again, it seems like it's kind of delayed. Like it's definitely picked up and we're busy, but I think we were busier. It felt like there was a bigger need for it the last time things were going like crazy. So
Then
not
this
as
time
much
you
as I
think.
expected. Right. So pre-COVID, 2019, it felt like there was opportunity everywhere, especially in the oil and gas, the upstream oil and gas region. And now we've got opportunity, and it's a lot busier than it was COVID time, but it's not like there's people calling us, begging us to come do more automation work for them either. So.
Yeah, and it's been a bit surprising to me because I know as a leadership team we talked a little bit that, hey, if we get into automation, it'll help insulate some of these downturns because it's
Right.
something everyone needs. Of course, though, we've also experienced, and we experience it in our own IT budget at work, it's an expensive adventure to go to
Right,
automate.
it is. But see, that's one of the reasons that you're somewhat insulated from the ups and downs is because the time and money that it takes to get someone trained in and familiar with your control system or facility, to lose them is a huge cost and have to retrain someone in when prices go back up, right? So if somebody knows your control system, knows your facility, knows how you do things, you kind of want to keep them around even when things slow down.
So do you think that's a client, when you're out talking automation to facilities and oil and gas, is that one of the biggest things they want to know is that you're going to get to know their facility?
It seems to be a big selling point or something they really appreciate about us is that we do try to assign one person to them or one group of people who can really learn their facility and come back for every project going forward, yes. I don't know what they ask about it, but when you tell them that, they certainly appreciate it.
Yeah. Have you found when you're out there doing it that every facility is just entirely different, their control system, or do they all have a commonality that if you have experience, you can build on?
There's definitely a commonality that you can build on if you have experience, but each one is unique to some extent versus like they might be doing the same overall process. One guy might be using a different manufacturer of PLC or HMI or whatever, and every one is slightly different, and there's a learning curve to learn every new piece of software or hardware.
Right. Well, and then everyone programs and has their own little
Right.
fancy way of doing language, basically, or coding. So
Right.
you got to get to know who developed the program and what did they mean by it.
Right, and one facility that we're working on right now, that's actually a challenge that we're having as we dive into their control system is it's both. they're a PLC and an HMI that we haven't worked with much in the past, so we're learning that software. And it's also a different programmer who didn't really put in a lot of detail, a lot of good naming or tagging, good tagging convention in his program. So there's just a lot of time spent interpreting it and figuring out what it's actually doing.
So in that situation, how in the world do you figure it out? You're just diving in and doing a ton of testing, or do we?
Yeah. You try to simulate. I mean, it just takes time. You know, what happens if I push this button? I'll walk it through the program, see where it goes, what it causes to turn on, to turn off, and so on.
Yeah.
And it just you spend a lot of time in the program until you start to remember, you know, where to go. If I click this, I know I go there, and then you can build off of that. It's definitely. You know, you start out learning slowly and it feels like you spend a lot of time not getting anywhere, and then all of a sudden it just starts to come together and you can make sense of it.
Kind of like when you're done building the house and you get to move in. You know,
Yeah.
you never thought it happened, and now here you are sitting in the recliner. So when you think about, you talked about keeping the same people or the consistent labor. What happens during this? I know at Wescom we had to get rid of some of the automation techs. Are you seeing that's a pretty hard market to go find people in?
Absolutely. I would say that's one of our most challenging areas to find new people. But I would say one of the challenges is we're looking for a specific automation tech who can be both a programmer, sit in the office, do that side of the work, and then also be a field tech as well, right? And wants to get out and understands electricity and general electrical knowledge, can hook up a device, calibrate a device, and then also go back into the programming. So it's a pretty unique person that we're looking for. And they're very difficult to find.
And we've done a lot of marketing to try and get that person. It's been interesting too. I know that we have a meeting with the college here in town coming up. They have a industrial controls program, and we've had some success with hiring some of those folks. And you know, they go in our panel shop and they learn a little bit. But that's a missing skill set to be able to do both. You know, you were lucky because you went out in the oil and gas industry right out of high school, a little bit of college.
Well, yeah, one year lineman school.
Okay, so then, and you started out as an apprentice and did the electrical and eventually got involved in controls. Do you think that field experience is going to be harder and harder for us to find?
I do, and I actually think that oil and gas is upstream oil and gas specifically is a unique opportunity for people to get that kind of experience and be that well-rounded technician. It seems like in the midstream space and in these other industries that we work, it's really uncommon. The field guys are oftentimes limited in their exposure to the PLC programs. That's done by maybe another firm, a contractor, or a process control engineer or something like that. There's not a lot of opportunity to get both sides of that. It does seem like in oil and gas that's still the case. I think it's just because the industry demands it. You can't. The facilities are small enough that when you're commissioning them, you've got to be able to do both, right? It wouldn't make financial sense to have a programmer and a field tech there.
Right, whereas a big manufacturing facility, that's one huge 20-acre facility,
Right.
they can afford to have two different people doing those two different types of work.
Right. Yep. And that's another thing with the upstream oil and gas that gives you a lot of opportunity is the fact that there's the PLC work, there's the instrumentation, the electrical, and then there's also the flow aspect of it with the flow computers and so on. So.
And all of these skills we've found, so we've been doing some work with the railroad, the shipyards, we're working with some mines, we've done some, all kinds of different, we got some paper mill that we do some of this automation work for. You feel like those skills that you're learning in the oil field can transcend into those industries?
Yeah. Yep, they transfer very well because they're using the same automation products. You're using an Allen Bradley PLC in the oil fields, you're using the same PLC in the railroad or mining. So if you can learn that PLC programming, yeah, it transfers easily over.
What about the job satisfaction that you get out in the oil field when you're working outside and you're able to touch all of these pieces? I got to imagine it's kind of exhilarating when the site is up and running, but yet then again, when you show up at the paper mill and you can just fix one thing, that's got to be exciting too. Do you find that there's a difference in job satisfaction in those?
I really enjoyed the oil field part where you kind of had your hands on everything. You walk away you feel some ownership over the site and that it's working. But you definitely can get it in the other facilities. And with Wescom, where we have both our automation and our electrical teams, oftentimes, we are involved in both, whether it's, say, our electricians are doing the install and our automation team's just doing the programming and the commissioning. It's still, they're members of the team working on it, and you're still working hand in hand with those guys. So I like being able to do both, but I don't think we've totally lost that, in these other industries.
Yeah. So kind of going back to the oil field and this price of $106, why do you think the producers haven't went all out on the automation world quite yet? Are we lacking on, my personal feeling about it is a lack of confidence in automation. They've went through the last 10 years. There's been a lot of change in the automation world in the last 10 years. So are they kind of starting to do a cost benefit analysis, or is it that there's data overwhelming, or they just need to get oil flowing and eventually things will settle down and they'll go back and do automation, which you and I know what'll happen is the oil industry will hit a pause button and they'll maybe do some automation work at that point, but it possibly could repeat itself. So is this just a client like confusion point, labor shortage?
Yeah, I would say it's a whole host of items. One, oil and gas, it's grown a lot in the U.S. It was fairly slow up until they started the whole fracking revolution and all that, and so it's grown in leaps and bounds in that amount of time. And so there's a lot of the, I would say the people who are in oil and gas now came from a lot smaller facilities, a lot less growth, and doing things cheaply. So there's a lot of people who that's what they know. We don't need a lot of automation to get oil out of the ground. As the facilities get bigger, automation is certainly very beneficial, but maybe it takes some time for everyone to catch on to that. And then secondly, there's definitely the labor shortage piece of it. Having, automation installed by somebody who don't know what they're doing costs a whole lot of money, and there's very little benefit, right? And there's a huge shortage of people who know what they're doing, who, one, are even willing to give it a try and go for it, but two, then who know what they're doing. Yeah. And so every time, especially if an oil company is trying out a new contractor, it's a huge risk for them.
Well, and we even saw this at the mine that we've done some work for. They had two different phases of a project they were looking to accomplish. Right. We bid on the first one, and we had to, what did we have? Several interviews, or at least one big interview, several phone conversations. There was a big qualification piece, and it almost felt a bit to me frustrating, or like we had worked at this mine for several years at this point. So what's the problem? Come to find out, when the project actually executed and we were awarded it and did a great job with it and the thing was running, we got invited to bid phase 2. We went and bid phase 2, and when we left the meeting, we heard about some prior issues with other contractors that had happened. You can see, hearing their side of the story as to what can happen with a bad install, you don't blame them one bit for vetting a good automation contractor.
Right. If I was in their position, I'd be very slow to trust anybody, and it's tougher to get in with people then, right? To get the opportunity to do the work. But then there's that benefit on the backside, is that if you do gain their trust, you're really going to be their go-to, as long as you can maintain that trust and do a good job, right?
Which clearly is can be difficult, easy on one hand because we know what we're doing, difficult on the hand that, what do you do, the chicken or the egg first? Right. So, we need automation techs, but we also need work for the automation techs. Yeah. You have this possibility of this work over here. When do you hire that automation tech? That's always
It's a huge challenge, because it's hard to go out and pursue that work if you don't have the, say, the programmer who's going to do it yet. Because even for us, it's to find that right person is a huge challenge, right? It's no different if we find someone, they seem to have all the qualifications, we pay them a lot of money, we bring them on, and then they don't live up to our expectations, right? That's a huge investment that doesn't pay off. So,
well, and then, or what happens to us, like this year, we had a particular industrial client that had verbally awarded us a large controls project. Right. We were pretty excited. Actually kind of were preventing ourselves from bidding on other controls projects because we were going to be so busy. I don't know if we actually officially turned any down, but we were concerned about our automation team out of our Twin Ports office anyways. And now today, as it sits our Twin Ports office for the automation team, we're on the hunt for some additional work because this particular client had to pull that CapEx project. So now, and these are folks who've, worked for us for a couple of years already and have proven themselves. The one has over, 15 years in the experience in the paper mill. They're highly qualified, and we know if we lose these folks, we're going to be starting this conversation all over.
Right.
So we have to be hitting the market, hitting the street hard, saying, hey, we got a couple automation techs, what can we do for you? And all it takes is one large project, though, and now all of a sudden they're busy again for
Right.
3 months, 6 months.
Yeah, it's especially challenging when we still have a fairly small team here in Twin Ports anyway. And so one big project can absorb most of our resources. But as we grow, if we can continue to build a team of good qualified people, that should become less and less of an issue.
And we're finding that even if we get small projects, we're finding we're getting invited back to do more.
Yeah.
It's been a really cool, the Twin Ports automation team has been a real fun piece of our business because we've had a lot of success with it. We might not be consistently full-time busy
Right.
all the time yet, but every client we've touched, we've done well.
We've pulled off some very challenging and large projects.
There was one that we
and
just
that have
finished,
gone very
wasn't there?
well.
That was there just one other contractor involved in an engineering firm? And
Yeah.
I thought I heard it was ongoing for a couple of years, possibly?
Yeah, so it was a kind of a mirrored, similar project another contractor had done. And once again, goes back to the risk you're taking with your automation contractors is the PLC programming portion of that project. We were, I would say, a year and a half beyond the expected completion date of that project when we completed ours, and there still had some ongoing issues. And it's tough to say what they were. I wasn't part of that project. Maybe there was some additional challenges there, but it's a real deal that if someone isn't, there can be challenges, right? You can pay a lot of money for automation, and if someone can't pull it off and complete it, it's a lot of wasted money.
Right. I don't think any of us can say that there's one of these projects that goes on without frustration, especially when you have multiple folks involved, like the project. Sometimes you have a headquarters involved, a local station. You got lots of folks that you're trying to appease, and things have to work a certain way. So there's going to be frustrations. The question becomes that how are we solving the frustration and at what cost?
Yeah.
The energy world is embracing automation big time. We see it in the oil and gas. We see it upstream, where your experience is very heavy. And what do we got? 5 automation techs working in the Bakken right now doing the upstream. Yeah. We're seeing it in midstream, fairly busy in the midstream sector.
Right.
What about the other industries?
A lot of the industries, I would say, it seems like the majority are actually in a position where their control systems, especially in our area, are getting old, outdated, time to be upgraded. A lot of them aren't even supported anymore by their, by the original manufacturer. Whatever equipment they were using is out of date and being phased out, and they're being forced to upgrade. And so when they do these upgrades, there's a huge opportunity to improve upon that control system. The ones put in the 70s and 80s, they don't have even close to the capabilities of the modern systems today. So, yes, there is I would say, a huge need and a lot of opportunity coming up in this industry as well. Totally different. Oil and gas, it's a bunch of new construction. We don't see maybe as many new facilities or anything going up here, but there's a lot of facilities that have ran for many years that are just aging and in a huge need of an upgrade.
So when you talk about an upgrade into a facility like I'm thinking paper mill, railroad, whatever facility, what are they actually trying to accomplish? Are they going for moving goods quicker? Are they looking for some, I suppose they're looking at energy costs?
Right. Well, the first piece is replacing the current system, right? You got to be able to do whatever they can do. And then as you replace, or when you replace the system, you look for added benefits. The one project we have going on, so there's it's a shuttle system. It fills some bins anyway, and it's always had an operator who's had to run this system and fill these bins, and they're looking to automate that. So that'll happen automatically through the PLC and won't need as much human, I guess, support or help to make that happen, right? So
this particular client, they were probably running out of their existing program, or it was no longer getting supported. They need to do some upgrades. Right. Well, we might as well do something that has an added benefit of less employee interaction or human
Right.
interaction.
So you can look at that where you can automate it. You don't need as much help, especially, the workforce is challenging nowadays. They might not be able to find someone to do that job in
Are
10
you
years,
finding
right?
that with our clients when you're out and about? That
Yeah, everywhere we go, it's the same thing you hear everywhere is we can't find people, or if we can find people, they're not qualified, or they don't stick around.
And
So,
especially in these industrial settings, they're having a real hard time. Our country or our society, however you want to look at it, we've been kind of sold a bag of goods is the way I look at it. But I know there's a lot of people that went to college and found their passion and are great. I went and seen a pediatric heart specialist yesterday with one of my kids. I'm awful glad that guy went to college and did what he did. But that's not for everybody. But there's a lot of folks who think that's the only route there is, and it totally removed the workforce. One of our clients can't find anybody in the industrial world to run his plant overnight. And they're talking about they might have to scale back their hours just because they can't find people.
yeah, it's really unbelievable. And then I always feel like, well, yeah, we can find people, right? But turns out it's nearly as challenging for us. I shouldn't say we can find people, but especially when it comes to a specific skill set or something, they're tough to find. They're
Well,
few and
finding
far between.
the qualified folks, the folks
Yeah.
who, like yourself, were willing to go put their boots on and go work in the field for 5, 6 years and actually just get promoted back into a different position. Those are especially hard to find because they've went to college, they come out of college, they're expecting to go make $50,000, $60,000 a year, which is very easy money to make in today's world, but they don't have a single skill set that transcends into what we need in the workforce overall. So when you're working at these facilities, are you finding that folks have a hard time within the facility embracing automation, or because they are lacking employees, are they more willing? When our team goes out and does these automation projects, what are you hearing from the clients? Are they happy that they're happening?
It seems like the guys on the plant floor, or, running the facilities, are oftentimes just resistant to change. It's just that's human nature, I guess. But once you install it and it works and it does a good job, they love it. It makes their jobs easier, right? It's just initially when you bring in a total new control system, new displays, everything looks different. Now they've got to relearn that. But there's a lot more, there's a lot more capability in the new system, and I think it would be very tough for someone not to love it after they work with it.
Well, they're super intuitive as well.
Yeah.
So nowadays, when you get a new system, a control system installed at your facility, and you got to go touch that HMI, it's way more intuitive. I went to meet a client last week when I was in the Bakken. It was a midstream company, and he brought us into his PLC, and he was all excited to show us his stuff. Old facility. It's only 8 years old, Calvin, but it is crazy how much the controls industry has changed in 8 years.
Yeah.
He's got so many different spots he's got to go to get data, and you can't read it on the home screen. I'm so used to walking into one of our facilities where it's all right on your HMI, and you can use your arrow functions and boom, boom. You don't have to know what F1 means and F3 and hit escape here and there. It's intuitive. So I think that makes it easier for folks to embrace. You're dealing with some people who've been in the industry 30 years. They're thinking 30 years ago when this control system got put in, it took me 3 years to learn it.
Yep, and they don't even know. They've never seen any different. It's oftentimes I find that surprising too. I've been working in the upstream oil and gas where everything's brand new. We're always, new equipment, the best of the best. It seems like every time, and then you go into these older facilities and you can't believe that when a conveyor trips a limit switch or something, they've got to actually go walk around and look for that. Right? They don't get an alarm on their HMI saying that at 11:59 and 17 seconds this thing tripped. And it tripped 3 times in the last 4 days, right? Like they don't got any of that. And it's so easy. It's just a standard part of the system nowadays when you install it, the alarming and alarm history and, logging of the data and trending. And you can pull all this data for troubleshooting, and it makes the guy maintaining the plant's life, it's easy. And when something goes down, it takes 5 minutes to figure out what it is instead of 3 hours.
Well, to that point, when we were commissioning the last site we worked on, that's exactly what was going on. We would try and do startup. Boom, it wouldn't happen. There'd be an alarm. We'd go fix that one alarm, kind of dial back in the program as to what was causing that alarm, get to the root cause, fix it, restart. And the first time, you go from 12 red lines down to 8, down to 4, and eventually everything's running great. Have you checked in with those folks? Is it still running great, by the way? You know which
They-
project I'm talking about?
I'm not sure which one, but I'll tell you, any project, if it's not running great, they check in with us. So
Oh, okay,
it
well,
is.
that's good. So they let us know right away.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the future of automation? Are you happy that you're in the automation world?
I am. I love the automation world. There's always new challenges, and I love that there's always new technology coming out. It just keeps getting better and better. Even, I guess it's going on 10 years now since I've been doing this, and you go back and look at the software from 10 years ago, and it's horrible, honestly. I love that there's always something new. It's just getting better and better, and there's always new challenges.
Have you seen some consolidation happen even within the software world, like companies merging, or are you still looking? I know that we only really are dealing with a few software
Right.
companies, but do you still see a lot of variant?
We see a lot of, so we deal with the same major PLCs and HMIs, right? But there's all these little components that do different things, especially around the different communication protocols and stuff between controllers and instrumentation and so on. And that's usually where we run into, say, the challenges or the different products is communication modules, gateways, switches, whatever, things along the lines.
And I got to imagine eventually that's all going to consolidate as well.
Yeah, it seems like more and more the major automation companies, maybe they just dealt with PLCs before, they're pulling more and more of that into their area.
Well, I mean, you even think about computers used to be tons of different computers, and now there's just some major manufacturers left.
Yeah.
And that's essentially with automation, it's going to follow that same path. So when we talk about the industry of automation, is there something about it that just drives you crazy? Like one thing that drives me crazy about it is how hard it is to find these automation techs, ones who have experience. We get a lot of folks, it seems like, who they'll even call John in HR that, if I'm at the office and answer, and they got all this automation experience, and you start poking them, and they really don't have any automation experience. They've just accustomed to running conduit for the person that's installing the automation equipment.
So that thing that drives you crazy causes the issue that drives me crazy is that no one's willing to give you a chance, or I should say, you got to work so hard to get somebody to give you a chance. If you're a new contractor or a new programmer and you want to go work for somebody, a new client, right? It seems like they're very slow to give you an opportunity, even a small one, just to say, hey, can you do it, right? And I think it's largely because of that. What you just spoke of is people come in all the time saying they can do X, Y, Z, and turns out they can't even do any of it. So.
Which is one thing I appreciate about Calvin, you is you're always telling me, like, don't over, and we've sat in client meetings and you'll tell them. I think one of the story I referenced where we had a couple interviews to get that controls project, you actually told them, we haven't had tons of experience with Honeywell, but I can promise you we have lots of experience in conversions and getting you squared away, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah,
So-
I strongly believe you should undersell and then overdo, right? And the my experience, either nobody has experience in every different control system, every different manufacturer, every different product. There's just too many out there. Nobody can do it. And so if somebody stands up there and says, I can do it all, you know right away that they're lying, right? If they can do it all, they can't do any of it well. But I can confidently say that between me and the rest of the team, we can figure out any of it, right? It just is going to take more time when it's a new system. And
Right.
so that's what I'll tell someone is, we can figure it out, but no, don't ask me a technical question about, Honeywell programming from the 1980s because I've never dealt with it. Well, now I have, so now I'll go ahead and I'll say that I have, but I'm not going to jump into it saying that I know it if I haven't done it, even if I feel I can figure it out.
Yeah, I think, I make the comment that it drives me nuts that it's hard to find qualified people. But honestly, one of the coolest parts about being in business is watching people succeed around you, and you get to play a little part in that. And that certainly has been my experience. Even with you were 18 years old, 19 when you went out to the Bakken?
19.
19 when you went out to the Bakken, starting out as an apprentice. You work yourself into a journeyman. Did you? Yeah, you're a journeyman in
Yeah, journeyman
Minnesota.
in Minnesota.
You have the hours in North Dakota, but there's a weird education piece requirement. And one of our clients gave you a shot at automation,
Right.
kind of pushed you into it.
Mm-hmm.
And you ran with that automation and became a very valuable member for that client out in the Bakken. Eventually, you moved over here to the Twin Ports, and now you run our entire automation. How old are you?
29.
29. So you got a 29-year-old guy here who's running our entire automation department at Wescom, and you're on our senior leadership team. You're on our board. You've had quite a career for a 29-year-old, and I know you're not an honor-seeking man, and I'm not trying to give you honor. I'm just stating that that opportunity is out there for the 19-year-old kid, and we can't even call them kids; they're adults. The 19-year-old adult out there wondering what in the world to do with his career. Here's a great option.
Right. Yeah, it's a huge opportunity, and the sad part is I feel like a lot of people don't even know it's there. I'd never heard of industrial controls or automation until I moved to North Dakota. I took a job as an electrician, trying to, just pass the time till I could get hired on as a lineman somewhere, and I'd never heard of it, right? And then I got an opportunity to start doing the automation. I started researching it, figuring out what it is, and I was really interested in it. So when the lineman company called, I turned them down. I just had a lot more interest in the control side. And it's still there. There's not enough people who do it. I think a lot of people don't even know about it, but it's a huge opportunity, and you can go so many ways with it. You can, if you get into industrial controls, you can be a field tech, you can go into instrumentation, you can be a maintenance guy at a plant, you can focus on the programming and try to make your way up into programming, design, more controls engineering kind of thing. We're designing control panels, speccing equipment. There's so many different opportunities in it, and there people who are I guess gain that experience and become qualified are very valuable. You can make a lot of good money doing that as well. So
Right, and a lot of career fulfillment when you can show up on a facility that's totally running without a single person being there and hearing from their Houston office or their Denver office that they have X amount of flow and they're curious about something and sending a tech out because they saw something in a program that gave them an alarm. It's pretty cool, pretty fulfilling. So what is your advice to those folks who want to get into the automation world? Should they just strap on their boots? Like, not everyone has to go out to the Bakken. I see ads in our newspaper, sadly enough, when I still read it, but whichever newspaper or whatever job board you're on, this is a highly sought after thing. It's not just Wescom looking for automation techs.
but find an opportunity, and then you gotta put in the work yourself. If you go to work somewhere and you're doing, I don't know what, say maintenance in a plant or whatever, you're gonna have to put in your own time, learning what this transmitter does, or the different communication protocols, or the different PLC programming languages, or just put in the work. If you want it, you got to do a lot of the work on your own. There's not people lining up to teach you. But if you do put in that work and learn, then it seems like there's just more and more opportunities.
I think that's every time I ask people that, what's your advice? It always kind of boils back right down to hard work.
Yeah.
Strap on your boots and go do it. There's no one going to do it for you. I have a very curious mind, so I know I drive you nuts whenever we're out on location together because I'm asking you a lot of questions that show me this, show me that. And the more you show me in that programming, the more intrigued I am by it. Unfortunately, I'm at such an age and in such a position in life where I
Yeah,
think
you want a job?
I should. Are you hiring? No, just kidding. But it's an awesome opportunity. We've seen a lot of younger guys come on our board and really go far places like yourself with it. So awesome opportunity at Wescom everywhere. Get involved in automation. There's so much more we could dive into, a lot of details about specific projects, specific systems, the cost and benefit paybacks on all of these. At the end of the day, the whole point of this automation for us at Wescom is we love to energize America. And this is a great way to keep facilities running. There's tons of data you can collect. We can go a million different spots with automation. And I look forward to doing it for our clients for years to come.
Right. And the cool thing with automation is, like I said, even though it's a big investment up front, it can be a huge cost savings long term for these clients.
Well, can you imagine, Calvin, if there wasn't automation in the oil field today?
Yeah.
Because do you remember what it was like? They had to have pumpers going sometimes several times a day to a location
Yeah.
to manually check on it. Now they just get alarms.
And I remember when you would pull up to a well site and it wouldn't be running, and nobody knew.
Whereas-
And now, if a pumping unit goes down, someone knows immediately, and they're on their way to bring it back up. So just the dollars in lost production before the automation and the SCADA systems and all that had to be immense.
It had to be. And then the other day when we started the new automation project here at a local facility, the amount of automation in there that is going on has allowed them to move from was it a 24-hour plant down to, eventually they went down to 16-hour days. Now they're down to like, they don't even operate Friday,
Yeah, it's
Saturday,
a couple
Sunday.
days a week.
Yeah, they don't need to because their facility is doing the same amount of work with way less
Mm-hmm.
staff and better equipment. And by the way, everyone that was working there looked totally happy with it.
Yeah.
They all seemed like a great group of employees.
They talk a lot about how automation is taking jobs, but it's a good thing automation is there to take the jobs, because as people retire, and especially, with they say like the baby boomer generation retires and all these openings, they're just flat isn't workers. Something's got to take those jobs.
Otherwise, we're going to see it go to a different country that we're
Yeah.
not going to be real impressed by.
I'd rather have automation doing it than another country. So
Well, I think we can share that passion. Well, thanks for coming on, Calvin. We'll continue the conversation.